Lecture number 1, the Buddha. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Before we begin the lecture proper, I would like to make a few introductory remarks about this course itself. At the present time, many people have been developing an interest in meditation. And part of this phenomena is the interest in the Buddhist forms of meditation. But in order for the practice of Buddhist meditation to become an effective means to spiritual development, it has to be based upon a clear understanding of the purpose of meditation. The purpose itself can only be grasped when we understand the doctrinal framework underpinning the practice. To follow correctly the Dhamma, there are two things which have to go together hand in hand. One of these is understanding, the other is practice. If these two can be brought into unison, if they can be made to complement and support each other, then the pursuit of the goal can be brought to a successful conclusion. But if we have one without the other, then that can only lead perhaps to a futile end. To have knowledge and understanding without practice, this is like counting the property of others without owning anything ourselves. If we look at our neighbor, we might see that he has such a beautiful house, so many cars, such a nice lawn, so many nice flowers, and so on. But as long as the property belongs to the neighbor and not to ourselves, then it doesn't do any good to ourselves. Or again, just having knowledge without practice might be like compared to reading the menus in a restaurant without eating anything. Even if we look at all the menus of the fanciest restaurants in town, that won't satisfy our own appetite. On the other hand, to want to practice without having the understanding needed as a grounding for the practice, this also is insufficient. In order to reach a given destination, we have to know where we're starting from, where we're going, and what is the route we have to travel along to reach our goal. To practice without having that understanding, this is analogous to the case of somebody who wants to travel from Washington, New York to New York, but he doesn't know the streets of Washington, he doesn't know the streets of New York, and he doesn't know the routes leading from one city to the other. Still, he thinks that the most efficient way to reach his destination is simply to get into the car, get onto the roads, and start traveling whichever way the car will take him. In such a case, he might use a lot of gasoline and put a lot of mileage on the car, but he won't meet much success in reaching his goal, in getting to New York. Thus, we need these two elements, understanding and practice, pariyatti and patipatti, and these have to work together hand in hand to bring about the achievement of the goal of the Buddha's teaching, enlightenment and liberation. Learning can be considered not only a supplement to practice, but also as a part of practice. For the entire Buddhist discipline aims at the growth of wisdom or understanding. Wisdom is the key to realization. And the Buddha teaches that wisdom develops in 3 stages. The first of these stages is the wisdom born of learning, called Suttamaya Panya. We don't have to become scholars of the scriptures, but before engaging in practice, we have to acquire some basic knowledge of the framework, the doctrinal framework of the teaching by means of learning. And this study of the teaching leads to the wisdom born of learning. Then, having acquired this degree of understanding, the seed of wisdom, in the second stage we have to develop the wisdom born of reflection, Chintamaya Panya, wisdom born of reflection. We have to examine the teachings we have learned. We have to explore them. We have to see if they're consistent, if they hold up, if they make sense. We have to check them out against our own experience and see if they can be verified in our own experience. Then, when we've seen that the teachings are valid, then we apply ourselves to realize the inner meaning of the teaching by the means of meditation. And the practice of meditation here leads to the third level of wisdom, called Bhavanamaya Panya, the wisdom born of meditation. So in actualizing the teaching of the Buddha, we have to pass through these three stages, one by one. First learning, then reflection, and then meditation. Meditation transforms the content of learning and reflection into actual experience. The present course is not intended to give a thorough and exact scholarly account of the Buddha's teaching. The aim is to lay down the fundamentals of the teaching which are essential as a foundation for practice. The teaching of the Buddha itself is called the Dhamma. The word Dhamma comes from the root dhara, which means to uphold or sustain. Thus the word Dhamma means literally that which sustains. And the word Dhamma signifies the truth realized by the Buddha. It is the truth which subsists by itself, whether it is understood or not, whether it is taught or not. The true nature of phenomena, the real mode of existence of things. The word Dhamma also signifies the path that leads to the realization of the truth. And again, it signifies the doctrine which elucidates the truth and which makes known the path. The Buddha does not create the Dhamma. The Buddha discovers the Dhamma through his enlightenment, and he makes it known to the world. And his teaching gives a verbal formulation of the true Dhamma, which is itself to be realized by direct experience beyond words and formulas. And because the Buddha's teaching makes known the Dhamma, the self-subsistent Dhamma, the real nature of things and the true path to realization, the teaching also comes to be called the Dhamma. The presentation of the Dhamma that we will give in these lectures to follow is made from the standpoint of the Theravada school of Buddhism, which is the oldest continuous Buddhist lineage that preserves the teaching of the Buddha going back to the historical Buddha himself. Other schools of Buddhist thought would present the Dhamma in other ways, deriving from their own philosophical standpoint. The principal source for our talks is the Tipitaka, the Pali Canon, which consists of 3 collections of scripture preserved in the ancient Pali language. The 3 collections are the Vinaya Pitaka, the Sutta Pitaka, and the Abhidhamma Pitaka. The Vinaya Pitaka is the collection of discipline. This gives the rules and regulations for the orders of Buddhist monks and Buddhist nuns. The Sutta Pitaka is the collection of suttas, the sermons and discourses of the Buddha and of some of his great disciples. The third collection, the Abhidhamma Pitaka, is the collection of philosophical treatises which present the Dhamma from the standpoint of a very precise philosophical and psychological analysis. Of these 3 collections, the one we have relied on mainly for our own presentation is the Sutta Pitaka, the collection of the Buddha's discourses. And we've also utilized some of the commentaries which systemize and explain the teaching given in the Discourse. Now we can come to the main topic of this first lecture, which is the Buddha himself. In one sutta, the Buddha says that one who sees the Buddha sees the Dhamma. So one avenue of approach to seeing the Dhamma, the truth proclaimed by the Buddha, is by examining the teacher, by investigating the one who makes known the truth. The deeper we understand the nature of the Buddha, the deeper we understand the Dhamma, the teaching. And of course the converse is also true. The deeper we understand the teaching, the Dhamma, the deeper we understand the Buddha. Now the word Buddha is not a proper name, but an honorific title. The word comes from the Pali Sanskrit root Bud, B-U-D-H, meaning to understand, to know, or to awaken. The word Buddha thus means the one who has understood the truth, the enlightened one, the one who has awakened from the sleep of ignorance and who awakens others from the sleep of ignorance. He is the finder of truth and the proclaimer of truth. The historical person we know as the Buddha was an Indian prince of the Shakya people living in northern India. He renounced his right to the throne, became a religious seeker early in his life, and then, after reaching enlightenment, he became a spiritual teacher. His given name was Siddhartha, and his family name Gautama. He was not called the Buddha in his early years, but he acquired this designation only in his 35th year, after he attained supreme enlightenment. However, when we say that the word Buddha is a title, this can be misleading. The word is actually not simply a title given to one particular individual, but it is a designation for a kind of individual. It represents not a single unique person, but a type of person. According to Buddhist tradition, only one Buddha, only one fully, perfectly enlightened one, can appear in any historical period. But throughout the cycles of world evolution, of cosmic evolution, there have been many Buddhas appearing one at a time, separated by vast intervals. Siddhartha Gautama is only the most recent Buddha, the one known to history. But all those persons who possess the requisite qualities, the completely enlightened world teachers, all of these gain the designation Buddha. An analogy can be drawn between the idea of a Buddha and the idea of the President of the United States. We apply the title the President only to the current leader of the United States, of the American executive branch. But the word is applied to this man not in the sense that he is the only president the U.S. has ever had, but because he is the latest president, the current president. But there have been many presidents in the past, and there will be more in the future as well. The word president applies to all those persons in succession, from the first American president up to the present one. All those persons who have been the leaders of the United States, of the executive branch of the United States government. Similarly, the title Buddha applies not only to the present Buddha, Siddhartha Gautama, but also to all those persons in the succession or lineage of enlightened ones who have appeared in the world going back through the ages of the past and going ahead into the future as well. Now this raises a question. The question, what is a Buddha? What are the distinguishing qualities of this type of person that receives the designation Buddha? We can answer this question from two standpoints. Firstly, from the standpoint of function, and secondly, from the standpoint of attributes or qualities. We begin with the standpoint of function. And to answer this question from the standpoint of function, we have to begin by considering certain aspects of the Buddhist cosmology, the Buddhist worldview. According to Buddha's teaching, the physical universe has no discoverable limits in space and time. The universe is spread out boundlessly without any first beginning in time and without any limits to its spatial dimensions. The universe, spread out in space and time, consists of countless world systems called lokadhatus, which exists throughout the universe like waves upon a vast ocean. Each world system goes through certain stages of development. It emerges from a state of undifferentiated matter. Gradually, it solidifies and takes on shape. It gives rise to worlds like galaxies which bear intelligent life. Each world system evolves until it reaches a certain maximum point of development. Then it begins to deteriorate until at the end it disintegrates and undergoes complete destruction. It becomes reduced again to undifferentiated matter. The lifetime of a world system, from the time it begins to evolve until the time it becomes completely destroyed, this period is called a kalpa, a kappa, an aeon. This is the time unit of cosmic measurement, a time unit of immense duration, of duration which is staggering to the mind. The early Buddhist texts give a simile to illustrate the time occupied by a kalpa. One time a monk comes to the Buddha and says to him, "Bhante, Venerable Sir, could you please explain or tell me the length of a kalpa?" The Buddha replies, he says, "It isn't easy to give a figure to make known the length of a kalpa." Then the monk asks, "Well, can you give a simile?" The Buddha says, "Yes, I will give you a simile." He says, "Monk, suppose there is a mountain, a yojana high and a yojana wide, all the mountain made entirely out of solid rock. A yojana is a measurement of length equal to about 7 miles. So we have a mountain 7 miles high, 7 miles all around, made out of solid rock." Then the Buddha continues. He says, "Once every 100 years, a man comes by with a piece of cloth made out of Benares silk, very fine silk, and he brushes against that mountain with his piece of cloth. Sooner would that man wear away that entire mountain of solid rock, but the kalpa would not yet reach its end." Such is the length of the kalpa. Now, within each world system existing throughout the Kalpa, there are different planes of sentient existence, different realms of life. There is the human plane, which is evident to us. Then above the human plane, there are certain other planes of existence, which we call the heavenly worlds, the divine realms. And then below the human realm, there are certain other planes of existence, planes of inferior types of beings. All of these planes are inhabited by living beings. And in all of these planes of existence, life is subject to the same law, the law of impermanence, the law of arising and passing away. Just as the world systems themselves come into being, dissolve, and perish, so living beings also are caught up in the same cycle, the cycle of becoming, of impermanence, of arising and passing away. And the living beings revolve in a cycle of becoming. They pass through a chain of rebirths, linking together innumerable existences. The beings again and again pass through the same cycle of birth, growth, aging, and death. This round of becoming, the round of rebirths, is called samsara, the wandering on, the cycle of existence. Beings arise in one plane of existence, remain there for the duration of their lifespan, then they pass away to take rebirth in some other plane. Thus all life is caught up in the cycle of arising and passing away. And for this reason, every plane of existence is seen as fundamentally unsatisfactory, as subject to suffering, either directly or indirectly, either in some gross, evident way or in some subtle, hidden way. There is no plane of existence, even the highest heavens, which is exempt from the fate of destruction. And therefore, every plane of existence, the heavens, the human realm, the lower worlds, are all encompassed in the range of dukkha, of suffering or unsatisfactoriness. Now, outside and beyond the wheel of becoming, the phenomenal universe with its world systems arising and passing away, there exists another state, an unconditioned state, a state of emancipation, of perfect bliss, of unfading peace. This state is called in Pali Nibbana, in Sanskrit Nirvana. Also there exists a path, a way which leads from one state to the other, from the impermanence and suffering of samsara to the bliss and peace of Nibbana. This is the noble eightfold path. And in the history of any particular world system, there will be periods when this path is known and followed. And there will be people who practice the path, and by practicing it are able to reach final deliverance, to reach the attainment of nirvana. But inevitably there comes a time when that path falls into neglect, when the knowledge of the path fades from people's minds until a path disappears and becomes lost. And when the path becomes lost, this means the loss of the way to deliverance, the way to Nibbana. Emancipation from the round of existence then becomes nearly impossible. It becomes just a legend or a vague dream of something in the distant past. And when the path is lost, there then follows a period of spiritual darkness, a period which might last for hundreds or millions of years, even for many aeons. But eventually, this long spiritual darkness comes to an end. Eventually, there arises within samsara a certain being, a man who by his own innate wisdom, by his own striving and energy, without any guide or teacher, rediscovers that lost path to deliverance. Then, having rediscovered that path, he follows it through to its end. He realizes the goal. He reaches Nibbana. Then he comes back to proclaim that path, to make it known again to the world. The man who accomplishes this twofold task of rediscovering the path to Nirvana and of making it known again to the world, this person is called a Buddha. A Buddha does not arise as a deity of any kind, or as the incarnation of a god, an avatara, a prophet, or a divinely inspired messenger. He comes as a human being. He begins as a man caught up like ourselves in the round of suffering and defilement in which all beings are caught up. However, he is not an ordinary man, but an extraordinary man, an Acharya Purisa. He is an extraordinary man with immense potentials of intelligence, energy, and compassion, which he has developed over countless lifetimes of self-cultivation. Throughout countless lifetimes, he has prepared himself for his future role as a Buddha by perfecting in himself the required qualities, the virtue, the powers, the wisdom needed by a world teacher. In his last existence, he quickly discerns the fundamental inadequacy of human life. Through his inner sense of mission, he goes forth to seek a way out of the bondage and suffering, and then, out of compassion, after discovering the way, he comes back to teach the path to the world at large. We see this function of the Buddha illustrated for us in the suttas. In one sutta, the Buddha gives an analogy. He says, suppose there is a certain district where the people are living in great poverty and they're looking for an escape from their condition. Then from among their midst a certain man appears who goes into the forest seeking for some other land to which he can bring his fellow countrymen. Suddenly he discovers a track running through the forest. He follows that track through until he comes to an ancient city, a very beautiful and wonderful city that has been inhabited by people in the past, but is now deserted. Having found that city, he then returns to his own city, and he leads his countrymen there. They revive the city until it becomes prosperous, successful, and flourishing. In the same way, the Buddha says, I have discovered this path leading out from the impoverished city of samsara, the round of birth and death, the round of suffering, to the splendid city of Nibbana, the place of deliverance. And having found that path, I make it known, the way to freedom from birth, aging, and death. So that is the special function of a Buddha, to rediscover the lost path to deliverance, to liberation, and to make that path known to the world at large. And by making it known to the world, the Buddha throws open the road to deliverance to all humanity, so that others can follow the path and by following it reach the same goal of liberation that the Buddha himself has reached. The Buddhas are not unique in achieving release from samsara. All those who follow it through, who follow the path through to the end, reach the same goal. These people are called arahants, accomplished ones, perfectly liberated ones. The specialty of the Buddha's function is the rediscovery and reproclamation of the path. Once it is known, those who learn the teaching can follow it through and reach the same goal. The second standpoint from which we can discuss the special nature of a Buddha is the standpoint of the qualities of a Buddha. And these can be dealt with from two angles, as the elimination of all defects and the achievement of excellent qualities. The elimination of all defects means that the Buddha has eliminated all defilements. The defilements, these are called in Pali kilesas, which means literally that which afflicts. The defilements are certain mental qualities, factors of mind, which cause affliction, bondage, and eventually suffering. The three basic defilements are greed, hatred, and delusion. And out of these three emerge many secondary defilements: conceit, jealousy, selfishness, wrong views, anger, hostility, laziness, presumption, obstinacy, vanity, and so forth and so on. A Buddha has eliminated all of these defilements totally, completely, and irreversibly. When we say that he's eliminated them totally, that means that the Buddha has eliminated all the defilements with none remaining. When we say that he's eliminated them completely, that means he has eliminated each defilement 100%, so that not even a fraction of any defilement remains left over in his mind. And when we say that he's eliminated all the defilements irreversibly, this means he has eliminated them in such a way that they can no longer arise again in the future. In the text, they are said to be cut off at the root, made baseless like a palm tree that has been drawn up by the stump. They've been made of a nature not to occur again in the future. Then, from the second angle, the achievement of excellent qualities can be understood through the three excellent qualities, the three gunas, characteristic of the Buddha. These are his perfect purity, his great wisdom, and his great compassion. The purity of the Buddha follows from his eradication of all defilements. Because he has eliminated all defilements, his actions of body, speech, and mind are totally pure. The Buddha can never commit any impure bodily action, such as hurting others, stealing, sensual indulgence, and so on. He can never make any impure statement, any statement which is false, malicious, harmful to others, or frivolous. And he can never think any impure thought, any thought motivated by greed, hatred, delusion, or any other defilement. That is the Buddha's complete purity, his purification of body, speech, and mind. The second distinguishing quality of the Buddha is his wisdom or knowledge. In fact, it is this quality which is signified by the term enlightenment. The wisdom of the Buddha has depth, precision, and range. The Buddha understands things in their deepest nature, in their most profound nature. He understands things with precision, exactly, truly as they are. And his knowledge has vast range. His knowledge can proceed unhindered to understand deeply and profoundly whatever he turns his attention to. The Buddha is called the Lokavidu, the knower of the worlds. And he's given this designation because his knowledge encompasses the countless world systems with their many planes of existence. And the Buddha's knowledge is a practical type of knowledge. He knows the minds and the hearts of living beings, their degrees of spiritual maturity, their capacity to understand, and he knows the right way to present the teaching to them in order to awaken their understanding, to bring them to deliverance. The third quality of the Buddha is his great compassion, Mahakaruna. The wisdom of the Buddha is guided by this compassion. Through compassion, the Buddha empathizes with sentient beings caught up in the cycle of suffering. And through compassion, he works to alleviate the suffering of beings by teaching the Dhamma, by making known to them the Dhamma that will lead them to liberation. Okay, to summarize then the answer to our original question, what is a Buddha? We answer this question from two standpoints, the standpoint of function and the standpoint of qualities. From the standpoint of function, a Buddha is a world teacher, one who discovers the Dhamma by himself without a guide, without an instructor, and makes the Dhamma known again to the world. Then, from the standpoint of qualities, the Buddha is one who has eliminated all defects, all the defilements, and who has acquired the excellent qualities of perfect purity, wisdom, and compassion. The full status of a Buddha is not necessary to reach enlightenment. Those who attain enlightenment through the instructions of a Buddha, these are called arahants. These are the liberated, accomplished followers of a Buddha. The question is sometimes raised as to the difference between a Buddha and an arahant. The Buddha himself states the answer in a sutta. He says that both a perfectly enlightened Buddha and the arahant are identical in reaching the liberating wisdom of enlightenment. Both are completely free from all defilements. Both are liberated from the round of suffering, the round of birth and death. The difference is that the Buddha discovers the path without a teacher and proclaims the path to others, while the arahant, the liberated disciple, learns the path from a Buddha and reaches the goal afterwards with the guidance of a Buddha. Also, the Buddha has special outstanding qualities, powers of knowledge and compassion, which enable him to establish the Dhamma in the world and function as a world teacher. At a single time, there can be even in a single historical period, there can be only one Buddha, but there can be many arahants. Many disciples who learn the teaching from a Buddha follow it and reach enlightenment through the path he makes known.